Welcome,
Okay.
Coach Jesse, to the Top Times
Good to be
podcast.
here. How are you guys?
We're
Good.
good.
Good to see you, Coach.
You as well.
Yeah,
Yes.
we'll let you introduce yourself and give us a little bit of your background, some of your accolades.
I don't know how many accolades there are, but um, I'm Coach Jesse. I'm been with the Storm for 14 years now, maybe going on 15. Kind of helped out with long jump for a while with Coach Ina, and then you fired me from that position and took over. I'm just playing. No, but obviously, along with Coach John, I primarily work with the high school sprinters. I'm also the girls sprint coach officially at Brownsburg High School, but in Brownsburg we do a pretty good job of cohabitating, if you will, as far as working together with both boys and girls and kind of sharing that responsibility between both. But my official title is girls sprint coach.
I think that's great that you all can work together, the boys and girls teams, because
That's
a lot of times you do see them separate. So, how did coaching come about for you? I know, but why don't you share like how you got into coaching track and field?
well, I started off just I've got a strength and conditioning background more than anything else, I guess. I raced cycling actually, like at velodrome way back when I was a teenager. Had some issues with my knee, got in some strength training and kind of figured out I was better at being strong than I was being fast back then. But from that, just with my kids being involved in different sports, coaching them throughout the years, and that kind of evolved into helping out with the Storm. Primarily is helping with strength at first, and kind of attacking how we can be fast from the strength side, I guess you will. And
So with having that approach, like I was looking at something the other day, they're talking about endurance doesn't come from running distance, but in speed comes from endurance comes from speed, not from endurance.
yeah, so I would probably agree with that to the standpoint of that your endurance comes from how fast you can be as far as being able to carry that speed somewhat. Like
Right.
like from your hurdlers even that your faster 200 runners are probably going to be just as good. You're better 400 runners, right? It's not necessarily. I've heard the old adage from a lot of distance coaches, and I don't necessarily know that I agree with, but they always would tell me you can run faster if you can run longer. I don't
Yeah.
agree with that. I think
You can run
you can
faster if you
run
can run
faster if
faster.
you can run faster, right? So um, I think your speed reserve is really what more encapsulates what we can do from a 400-meter standpoint, or even 300 hurdles, or so forth. Like I know a lot of 400 people that think they should have to run a whole lot more all the time. They do mileage and things to that effect, and typically once we get their 200 better, it seems that their 400 starts falling into place a little bit more. So I would probably definitely be more along the lines of a speed reserve type philosophy, if you will.
When it comes to developing like these athletes, because you get to work with a lot of athletes, strength training wise and otherwise. What is it like key areas to work on with them?
I think for me, one of the biggest things is that I try to kind of attack it from a different angle, like especially with the high school athletes. Most of them are probably in some type of advanced physical conditioning class at school, and I always look at it from the standpoint that okay, they're going to back squat, they're going to power clean, and do some pretty traditional exercises. So from my standpoint, I feel like I want to try to fill in those missing pieces, if you will.
Mm.
One thing that I've learned over the years is, and Coach I know I've done this with a couple athletes over the years too, is just focus on strengthening the hip flexors and the core. I mean, I think a lot of people, especially see so many people have hamstring injuries and things to that effect. Always like if you haven't had one, you know someone that does, or you haven't had an athlete that's had one, you know someone that has definitely had those type of injuries. And I think just a lot of that starts with the hips. It goes back to you, coach, with being able to help with the chiropractic end of that and keeping their hips aligned and things. All that stuff comes into play. So, obviously I've seen a lot of athletes to you from that standpoint as far as making sure that we're just staying healthy. So I think attacking, getting the hips mobile, being able to get them stronger and making sure they stay healthy is probably a missing piece that a lot of people kind of lack. And that kind of goes back to people overtraining and things to that effect, right? They're always doing all the heavy grinding and they're not doing the stuff that needs to be focused on as far as staying healthy. One thing is like if you even watch the Olympics, the people that were in the front, their knees up are higher than the people that are in the back. I mean, it's just that's it's a pretty stark visual. Like that's the thing. Like with Sha'Carri Richardson, even right when she's
Mhm.
finishing the race, she's got a high knee still. Usain Bolt had that
Mhm.
knee up high. Noah Lyles has that, right? The strong finishers are able to have those good high knee postures. Michael Johnson was that way, and I think a lot of that just goes back to the hip flexor. I show kids a lot. You can Google FloJo's hip flexor, and it pops up with her sprinting, and the size of her hip flexor is insane. They've done like ultrasounds of world class sprinters hip flexor versus other world class athletes in like rugby and stuff, and the sprinters hip flexor is always bigger. So I mean, there's something to be said about just making sure we get that mobility and things to that effect, targeted, if you will.
So Coach, you've been at this for a long time with Storm and with your high school teams. How has your leadership kind of evolved in the field? And again, in this space, I've seen how you've really grown in the contributions from a strength and conditioning standpoint with our with club and with your high school. So can you expand on that or share additional things like how under your leadership, things that have really made impact?
Leadership wise, I think one thing I've been blessed to be around a lot of really great coaches. You guys are prime examples of that. Coach Mike, Coach John, Coach Papenfuss and Wagner at Brownsburg, just being around people that kind of share that vision to help a kid get better, right? So whether you want to call that leadership or not, I think it's just having a kid understand that you truly are on their side and you want the best for them, and that you can hopefully help them get somewhere if they kind of buy into that process. And
we know as track coaches, nobody's in it for the money. So I mean,
I guess not unless you like Lance Brahman or someone like that, right?
Yeah, but clearly nobody's in it for the money, especially at this level. But looking at it, like high school coaches are typically some of the coolest people on the planet in terms of just getting along and everything else. But what is it that in particular about the sport that you would say you just love about it?
I think one of the things about it is the fact that you can contribute to a team still, but you still have to have that accountability on your own shoulders, right? Like you can go run a great 100 and contribute some points to your team, but you can still have that individualism from it. And so there's no hiding from that moment, really. You're right.
Yeah.
That clock don't lie. It's really what it boils down to. So
yeah,
we have to do what we can, and then we can also just see improvement from week over week, year over year. And if you didn't win the race, you can say, you can set that big PR or something like that and have had a fantastic race and say, okay, you can see clearly that journey that you've been on, hopefully where it's taken you.
So with track being such a, it is an individual sport, how do you cultivate that strong team dynamic? I mean, we see it when we're at the meets with you. Granted, we, coach with you in the summers, but even just that team camaraderie, like how did that happen? Because it's not
Well, I think it's a cliches, right? But it kind of takes a village, right?
Yeah.
You just to again have a set of coaches around you that really kind of cultivate that same culture, push that same thing, that they the athlete can tell that we're for them. I think that's the type of energy that becomes contagious. So they want to root for each other, and it's from last couple of years we've had some pretty good success on the sprint side, and we see the growth on our distance side, and we've had even field events just continually get better. So I think that makes it maybe a little easier than practice putting your best foot forward in every situation, and then when those big ones are there, it's you're there for it.
You're ready. Mm-hmm.
So over these past couple of years, you've been able to see some things happen in terms of track and field. And is there something that stands out in terms of a sharp memory with over there at Brownsburg?
I mean, we've had a few of them. Even with the club this year, with our 17, 18-year-old young women, they had a fantastic time and finished third at the Junior Olympics here at College Station just a couple earlier this month, or I guess last month technically
We'll just
now.
count it this summer.
But again, just for them all to have, and even to a degree exceed our expectations as coaches, right? I mean, they ran a tick faster than what we thought they could. So
yeah.
To watch that a couple of years ago, our boys 4x1 at Brownsburg broke the state record that was, I think, 40 years old in the 4x1. Let's see. I remember telling Coach Papenfuss at the time, I felt like we caught lightning in a bottle. We had 5 or 6 guys. We were really deep, and they were running really well, and they had great camaraderie with each other and things like that. And so just to watch that growth from the beginning of the season to the end of the season, sometimes it's easier to do that when those expectations aren't on your shoulders, but we kind of had that target on our back early on. So to continue to do that with that pressure, I think is probably one of our prouder moments as coaches at Brownsburg. Just the fact that we were able to help them win the school's first track and field state championship.
So speaking of pressure, right? Like, I mean, as much as there's pressure for the athletes, there's also pressure on the coach. And so, what you saying, like, there's a target. There was, I mean, a target on your back. So, how did you navigate that? And then, how did that magnify so your athletes fed off of that same energy? Like, how do you handle that type of pressure?
Well, and like you guys had that 19, right, with North Central, the phenomenal girls team you all had. I think you just, for one, again, you play how you practice, right? You continue doing the little things right, and just keep focusing on, hey, we've done this, whether it's at sectionals in Plainfield or state at IU, or we've been in national events before that we've ran really well. So when you practice the way you're supposed to, and don't let the event be bigger than you, or let you know what I mean.
The season can be long. How do
It can
you,
indeed.
especially when you go into the summer, right? There is no
Yes,
break.
ma'am.
So how do you keep your athletes healthy throughout the course of the seasons? We have athletes who I want to do a little bit of extra over here. What that
Yeah.
looks like, and I'm sure Coach, we're not both will feed off each other on that, like because we're seeing it more now. So the first component is how do you keep your athletes healthy throughout the course of the season, and how do you navigate any dynamics where you just have an amazing athlete who may need more, and what that looks like, and other influences that could kind of blur.
Yeah. I think one of the things, and I'll probably end up on my soapbox before this question's all the way done being answered. I think one of the big things is, like, one of the things we started with, even when I was at Avon, was doing yoga once a week. And just, you can't run Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday consistently. It's like redlining your car on a tachometer. At some point, if you keep that thing, the pedal to the metal all the time, something breaks, right? So our bodies are kind of that same standpoint. It's just a more divinely created engine, if you will. So just trying to stress to them how important rest is. I actually seen a coach the other day on something on Instagram. I wish I would have saved it, but he was talking about how over his decades of coaching, how his really good athletes that manage to stay really good but never become great, the biggest problem is, or challenge, if you will, is the fact that they can't seem to deal with the prescribed rest. So they feel like they've got to do something more, right? And so I think that's a big part of it. I remember seeing Quincy Wilson during the trials. I seen an interview with him, 16-year-old kid, right? And he's talking about how he does, on the weekends, does he miss out with his friends as far as this and that. He's like, I go to bed at 9:30 every night. I've got bigger plans than to see this movie or go to the skating rink or things like that. And so trying to just instill that discipline in a kid to make sure that, to stay the plan. Like, so if you guys got kids, you obviously have kids at North Central, and you've got a plan set for them, and then they do some other things outside of that plan that you can't really account for.
Right.
But that makes it tough to keep them healthy. So I think hopefully just trying to get that through to the athlete that, hey, we've got to communicate everything we're doing, trust our process, because our process has gotten you pretty good so far. So we continue to make strides. Let's not go outside of that parameter. Now if he wasn't making any progress or something like that, we'd be having a different conversation. Obviously, how can we help? And I think, unfortunately, that's sometimes where kids kind of take off. They seem like they came out of nowhere. They're doing really well, and then parents, and not all parents, but then sometimes parents like, oh well, I got to get them doing more. So then they've got their 4 or 5 days of weights at school, and then they've got practice 3 to 4 days a week in the winter time. Eventually, obviously, becomes 4 or 5 days of practice during the track season, and then you may even have a couple of meets, of course. And then they're doing extra stuff like that during the season. It obviously becomes a problem, and you can kind of see when the kids just start slowing down and things to that effect, because they're probably doing a little bit too much. So,
but with the success you've already had, like how do you plan on building that? You've won the state championship on the boys' side, anyway. I know you've had some people who've been successful on the girls' side. How do you build on that as a team? What do you see, going down the road there?
well, I think it boils down to just development, right? Like, you get people excited. We had a couple freshmen this past year that showed a lot of promise and continue to get better. We've got some incoming. I think our junior high, one of the coaches at Brownsburg East is just a phenomenal coach, and you can tell when those kids come in that they've been coached, not just run amok, if you will. So I think having a decent feeder program is probably huge for places if you can get involved in that. And that's tough. It's tough because sometimes, to be quite honest, the junior high coaches don't want to hear it because they've done this for however many years, and
You're right.
they and if you have a different kind of philosophy or something like that, I think it's important to try to get those feeder programs doing what you do, right? So it becomes more of an evolvement rather than just like a deconstruct and trying to redo everything that people don't have to unlearn what they've been taught the last 2 years and relearn something else. So it's kind of nice just to kind of be able to evolve from one step to the next. That consistency from the junior high standpoint, support them, and continuity in the weight room, right? We've got a great weight room staff at Brownsburg. Our head boys coach is in the weight room. Our head girls coach is part of the PE staff as well. And I think that helps us out tremendously just because we're able to kind of control some variables that maybe some other track coaches can't, honestly. So that's probably one of our my biggest blessings is the fact that I know the people that are in the weight room are kind of really taking care of the athletes from a track standpoint too, not just trying to look at lift heavy and be big.
Yeah, that's a huge advantage when the coaches are actually involved in the school lifting, to say the least. Shout out your the coaches' names. I think you said the head coach earlier, and who's the girls' coach? Give them a shout.
Coach Wagner, Coach Popovich, and Coach Wagner, the collectively head boys and girls coach, and they're phenomenal, man. I mean,
so Coach Jesse, clearly with all your success, your athletes, like quite a few of them, a lot of them want to go to college. So how do you handle the recruitment process? How involved are you in that and helping them navigate that process?
Yeah, I mean, Coach Popovich is probably more involved with that at the Brownsburg level than I am. I'm obviously always available. I generally encourage the kids to reach out to the school first. I think it's good for a coach to see the kid taking that initiative. So
Absolutely.
that's generally, and I'm always happy to help them with their times. They've got the GPA and all that stuff. I know a few years ago at North Central, Coach John set up a thing with the I think they call it clearinghouse now, but the eligibility center, as far as be able to navigate that. So I think a lot of kids don't know until they get recruited that that's a resource out there that can help them kind of be seen, if you will, right? Not a whole lot different than like when these kids are football players are on huddle and things of that effect. That eligibility center where I believe you have to have it.
Yes.
You do have to have it. And that was one of those things, like in that the parents' blueprint to athletic scholarships. It was a book we put together. It's a book. It'll be on our website, but it'll that's another way to help parents kind of navigate that process in terms of when you
100%
and kind of making sure you have all that stuff taken care of. This podcast is something that to help kids get that exposure as well.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And let it be about the academic part first. And like, I mean, we've been fortunate enough to have a couple that went pro, right? But how many kids really go pro in track, especially?
Right.
So your biggest part of this is getting as much of your college as you can paid for,
Absolutely.
whether it's D1, D2, or NAI. And that's the other thing I think I try to stress to kids a lot. Like, if you're an NAI All-American, they call you an All-American. And
right.
there was a kid in trials this year, I think there was a D3 dude, right? The kid he ended up transferring to Florida, I believe. Maybe there's fast dudes across every division in college.
Right.
So the more of that you can get paid for, that's your biggest flex.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I tell people that all the time. It's
a huge flex.
Yeah, if you're able to get the money, then you're in a much better position down the road. Like they don't understand that now, but when I went to school, it was scholarship. Now, and I see the difference in terms of what life looks like after that. But I have you don't have student loans.
Start now without $200,000 of debt is a whole lot better than starting with it, right?
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So and if you have the talent to do that, that's great, regardless of what level it is. If you can get some of that taken care of, I mean, I think that's kind of what it's about. A lot of sometimes, for athletes,
and control your academics, right? I mean,
right.
Obviously, if you have two people that are both pretty similar as far as times and the 1 and 2, whatever. That person that's gonna maybe have a little bit more range, and the person that's got better grades is gonna get that scholarship first, like 100% of the time, right?
Yeah, if I'm a
Um,
college coach, I don't have to worry about you flunking out of school. That's what I want.
Exactly.
right.
Exactly.
And that was something I try to, well, in that book I was trying to instill that in the parents, like, and especially like the beginning of the year, like now you have these, freshmen who are, whether they're in college or they're in high school, they have to understand that the academics is the most important thing that they can do. I mean, this
Yes,
whole
sir.
first freshman
100%.
year, their first year, you got to be solid all the way around.
Yeah.
That's what's the foundation of your GPA. It gets
Yes.
harder and harder to move it if you're stinking it up right now.
Mhm.
So, and they have to be out of get away from, worrying about asking for help or getting a tutor. I'm dumb, I got a tutor. That don't have anything to do with that. It's about handling your business right now.
Right. Yes.
So, and
Well,
if
and I
they
think
can,
it's even more important now with like the transfer portals, the way they work, because if this dude can go get someone that's already been in college for 2 years, and you got a little bit of a question mark. Well,
Right.
right. Yeah. I got a guy who can handle the academics, who can handle the sport. I already know. Yeah.
yeah.
So you
Mhm.
have to be really solid coming out. Kind of noticing a trend of you have some athletes who are, when they've had some success, they have like a lot of people who want to tag along. Um,
Yes, sir. That's
well,
That's
that's
not
certainly a
what
challenge in this day and age.
yeah, but I'm gonna put this out here about you. I know you don't want to say it, but I want to say it. So I don't recall in the past since I've been here 10 years. I don't recall there being a person on the podium at a state track meet that you haven't had some sort of affiliation with in terms of whether you had coached them at one point in time or whether they had trained with you.
Well, I certainly appreciate it. I mean, like I said, I'm a strictly a word of mouth guy. I don't go hunting people down and things like that. I think sometimes when, like I said, unfortunately, sometimes people get some success, and like you said, some folks want to attach themselves to that for they clout chasing is what they're doing. I'm not one of those people. You're not one of those people. Coach Ana's not one of those people. Coach Mike's not one of those people.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
how as a parent, how should a parent actually address that? Because I think the reason we see it more often is because a lot of parents don't know how to deal with it, and obviously the people make a good pitch and they make it sound great, but what should a parent look at? How should they navigate that situation when it comes to their kid and they have this other person who shows up saying what they can do for this kid, and the kid's already having success of where they are?
Yeah, I think that's it. Just like look at it for face value sometimes, right? I think for one thing, like from let's say we use you guys at North Central, me at Brownsburg. Like if we're making progress with you through the year, the parent wants to do something extra, have that conversation with your school coach first. Like
right.
understand what that program's about. And I think it's easy for someone to get the word infiltrate is probably not the right word, but poison the process somewhat as far as well they're not doing this right and all that. So I think unfortunately sometimes you get some of these folks that will you're doing wrong with your program instead of what they could do right with you. So
Mhm.
um, I've always kind of been in a habit of I try not to. I mean, there's people I'm frustrated with, right? But I'm not going to get public into that.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
if you ask me like, what do you think about this person? Well, I mean, I don't know them, but
Mhm.
here's what I can do for you, and
Right.
here's what I think we can do, and here's where we were, and here's where we
Yes.
are. So
Yes.
you
Yes.
know, pay attention to that. Again, I
Yeah.
think sometimes, and what happens is folks get again trying to get involved with someone because they're up and coming. Like, okay, I really want to be able to attach myself to that person or something, and then they get themselves ahead of a process, and they don't have their senior year or something because they've done too much. And it's unfortunately something I've seen with athletes, some of mine, some
Mhm.
of yours, like just over the years that it's unfortunate that some of these kids because of that, you always get knocked back down. Like if the process won't let you get ahead of it under any circumstance, because something's going to slow you back down to where you're supposed to be. And unfortunately, we try to rush it too much, it's going to push you back to where you was
Absolutely.
behind where you started at.
Yeah.
Like I like to think that the Storm's got a really great relationship with a lot of high school coaches. We got
Yes.
quite a few kids that their high school coach told them to come run with us. If you're going to run somewhere in the summertime, come run with us. And
Mhm.
so if a parent starts with that high school coach and kind of gets, because the thing is, I won't say everyone, right? But most high school coaches I've ever met, been around, have your kids' best interest at heart. Like Jermaine, you talked about earlier, there's no money in this.
No.
Like, we obviously not having this call from a yacht off of the coast, the Gulf Shores or something, right? So
Right.
there's no money in this. So at that point, they want their team to do well, and part of their team to do well is making sure the athlete's healthy and the athlete's doing well.
Where were the athletes and where are they now? So what was already taking place prior to maybe the people who are clout chasing? And those are things to ask the parent, like, well, okay, well, show me someone who was here and now they're here, not influenced by the high school coach. And that would be an indicator of, okay, this person knows exactly what they're talking about, versus an athlete is already successful. Hey, you're not doing this right. Why don't you come over here with me? And you have them for just, a month or so. So that's really important, because parents do fall into that. And it's the patience thing too, where you have a good week, like you said, and then when you're not patient, that's when you make kind of irrational decisions about what's best for your athlete without asking those questions about the person approaching.
Yeah, I think it's just important across the board to not have knee-jerk reactions to the training, right? Because the best training you have is consistency. So if we go and get out of that realm and get ourselves hurt, then we can't be consistent, so we can't improve. But you going back to the whole college recruiting things, I tell kids like, okay, once you figured out you want to go to dental school, so University of Michigan's got a good dental school, let's say. So now we figured out there. So our next thing is track. Okay, they recruited a lot of great people. Okay, same thing though from a coaching perspective. When those people came in as freshmen, they were running 10-7 already, and then their junior year they're still only running 10-7. Did they improve or did they get recruited well? Right. So, and it's the same thing here. Like, okay, you're if you're not running any faster with this outside trainer that came and recruited you, basically, because that's what they did, right? They came looking for you because you did something special enough, or that you started capturing people's attention,
Right?
But did they get you better, or did they just attach the name to you and let you know what I mean? And so same thing in schools, right? Like, okay, your alma mater, IU, do they? I don't know. I honestly haven't paid attention, but like, okay, do they recruit fast kids, or do they get kids that are pretty good and make them better?
I've been away a long time. That's the question
you got to ask yourself, right? Whether it be with the Storm or Brownsburg or North Central or IU or Purdue or whatever, right?
Yeah, Coach Jesse, that's really important too. Like I like to tell athletes, as much as schools are recruiting you, you need to recruit them. So what athletes they bring in, and how are they performing now? That's an indicator of their coaching. Right. And if they either got worse or they stayed the same, then that's probably your answer to whether or not that's a good place for you to go. I think that's really important. Yeah. Yeah. That's really
so as many questions they're asking you, you need to be asking them, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, I've told kids before, like, it's just the shady side of it, the dirty, whatever you want to, but like getting a scholarship for track is a whole lot like buying a used car. That salesman wants as much money out of you as he can get for that car. That coach wants to give you a few dollars as he can so he can give someone else some money. So you got to kind of go in there understanding your worth and not being too emotionally attached to a specific program until you know that what they can help you with, right?
Right.
Well, and then on the other side of that, going back to the academic side, when you have your academic solid, you get to choose.
Right.
Yes.
You're
they're already giving you money.
Yeah, you opened yourself up to so many different levels. Because there's a D3 school that has plenty of money for you. They can find you academic money plus
I tell kids all the time, they don't give you athletic scholarships, but they'll find every grant under every rock that you never even heard of.
Right, exactly. Especially if you got those academics.
They're very creative and good. There's a lot of very good D3 programs out there that again, and a lot of times those smaller D3 schools, from an academics, the degree you get carries a lot of weight, man. Like, Wabash around here, Clyde Morgan's a fantastic coach, obviously. Like, and when you get that degree, you're wired in the state of Indiana and Midwest, because there's a lot of prominent people that have graduated from that school.
Yeah. Well, DePaul's another one.
DePaul, Hanover, every one of those little D3 schools around here kind of have that strong network, if you will.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's the thing that people miss I think
Mhm.
it's like when you get out of school, yeah, life begins,
Yes.
and relationships are going to be the most important thing you probably have.
Right.
If you could talk to any of the coaches recruiting right now, who are some of your athletes to look out for this year?
Oh
And it's
man,
probably a slew of them.
like any, yeah. I think so. I've got a senior this year that was kind of probably going to be under the radar for everyone. She was on a 4x1. Angelique Calgate kind of got a late start, but she started really coming on to the end of the year this year, and I'm expecting like her to have a big year. We've got some underclassmen. I think that incoming junior Sophia Nebeso. You said you want to get her on the podcast, so hopefully she'll accept that invitation soon. But she's probably got one of the best upsides as far as just pure talent that I've possibly ever,
Yes.
I've been forced to be around some really good, talented, hardworking people, and she's got a gift as far as how much talent she has for track and field. So, if I was a college coach, I'd definitely be watching her. Got a sophomore that they can't talk to yet, Eden Wolf. She's just a machine. She works hard, just seems to be unfazed by things, and just continues to drop time after time after time. And I think good kid, quiet. I like quiet.
But she was on
Guys side,
that.
I got a couple kids that would probably be. I think they might go towards football, but if they don't, I could see them doing really well. At least college at some level. A kid named Isaiah Billups that really came on as a great leader for us this past year as a junior. So I'm excited to see what he does once football season's done this year and just where he can go. There's some North Central kids that we've been around that, I think Athena she's a junior now, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I think she's got some talent. She got to put a little muscle on her legs, but
She's got plenty of talent.
yeah, but she got a lot of talent. It seems to be a good kid.
She is.
So I think Gabby Moore's got a big upside if she can kind of get some things out. She's been in here starting to work hard. I think her at Indiana State of Regional, she popped off and had a really great 200. So I expect that you guys will do some big things with her this year as well. That's obviously a short list of quite a few people that I think are going to be really, really good. We got a couple girls that ran with the Storm at Avon, my enemy school now, right? Yeah, we still love them, but like Nevaeh Wren and Journey Riley both were there. I think Journey's going to be a junior, Nevaeh's a senior. They both, I think, have got a lot of talent.
Well, Coach, we appreciate having you on here.
Yeah, we appreciate you having me. It's good to talk to you guys.
Yeah,
absolutely. It's cool to share you with the world. So
yeah, since we get
you're
to do
quiet.
that.
You're quiet. I put in quotes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, my voice carries a little bit on the track, but
a lot of it.
Yeah.
Well, generally, I'm trying to keep you out of trouble, Coach Ines. So
no, I think it's the opposite. It's the opposite.
That's what that's what you always tell everybody, but we both know.
I learned from the best.